It's probably just us multiple times.
All right, so welcome out there to the World Wide Web. We have today for this Google FAQ 3 members of the Google GEG here in Ontario. And we've got James. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jim Jameson. I teach actually in the York Region District School Board. I'm a curriculum consultant and became a Google certified teacher in Atlanta this last summer. And I'm a self-proclaimed Google geek.
Fantastic. And James? Can we hear him? Oh, Jeffrey.
Hey, how's it going? Hey everyone, Jeff Humphreys here. I'm coming from Ottawa. I'm an itinerant teacher of assistive technology here for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, and hoping to answer some of your questions tonight.
Perfect. So we've already got a few questions in our document, and I figured that might be a good place to start. Do you want to jump into the document and take a look at a question, see if you've got one you want to answer?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we just start with the very first one, talking about actual strategies to organize work shared with students. So I guess to me, there's a couple different ways to go about this. There are, the tools like Doctopus and Google Classroom. But what do we do in cases where we do not have the ability to turn those on within our domain? Currently at my school board, we don't have Classroom Live, so we have to come up with these other ways and we can go ahead and share documents and kind of create these hand-in-hand folders. So I have 2 sort of tips that I do. One, sometimes I get teachers to make folders and share them with their students, where students can then just drag work into these folders for submission. And the other thing I like to do is I like to create a Google form for lesson submissions. So a very simple form that students would just copy and paste their Google URL. And then as a teacher, I have all of my students' work in one nice clean sheet. I just have to click on the link and I can go and view it. So that's kind of a workaround for things like Classroom and Doctopus. How about you guys? Do you guys have any other ways to do it?
I'm a big fan of Google Classroom that came out this past September, and I find it to be the easiest way of getting materials to the students and to keep track of where the documents are and who's shared on which documents. The only downfall to using Google Classroom is the inability to share with groups right now. So if you wanted to share with a group of students and you want them working on a group project, how I get around that is I name a group captain, and I have them be the one that clicks on the link and then has the responsibility of sharing with the 3 other members of their group. So that's sort of just a little quick tip.
Yeah, I'll just jump in for the last one. Yeah, definitely figuring out your workflow is important, and I think kind of the starting point for most is they will set up that shared folder. Have each student have a shared folder and share that folder with the teacher, and then usually it's the teacher that wants to have that organization sort of in their folder, so adding everything into My Drive somewhere, and then just teach the students the workflow that when they're ready to hand something in or when they're looking for feedback on it, they've got to drop it in that folder, sort of thing. Me personally, like Lee said, I'm a big fan of Google Classroom, being kind of by far the easiest way to do it. And if you're sort of more familiar with the sharing and things like that, then Doctopus, which layers in Gubrick in that as well, is always a fantastic tool.
That's true. Do you use a shared folder shared with the entire class, or do you have folders that are shared individually with students and the teacher? How do you go about doing that?
Usually I'd have both on the go, so depending on if I was doing peer work or things like that, there'd always be one folder that was just shared between me and the student, so I was the only one that had access to it. And then I'd always have a class folder as well, where we kind of had more stuff going in and out, and it was more of a class edit folder as well.
Fantastic. And how do you use a folder, Jeffrey, that would be shared with the entire class?
Yeah, I like doing sort of the entire folder shared with the class and then having, excuse me, a handout aspect to it. So students can then, they know always where to go to get their handouts, and then from there it's always view only. The students can just go ahead and make copies from there into their own drive. And I just find it's nice and clean. They always know where to go to get sort of that handout work. But like you said, the ideal solution is to have something like Classroom or Doctopus going.
I like also having a shared folder with all the students in the class where we're collecting photographs, let's say, from our school outings. Mm-hmm. So if we visit the museum and I have multiple students taking pictures of the different artifacts, they can all contribute to one shared folder, And then when we're building our presentations from that trip, they're all able to access that same information. So I find that to be a huge advantage to that shared folder that's shared with the entire class.
Yeah. One quick thing that Jeff, you mentioned there about the idea of making the shared folder view only. That's critical. If you don't want them taking stuff out of it, you got to make sure that folder is view only. Otherwise, if they try and organize it themselves and they say, no, I want this file to be in a different folder that you don't have access to, you will lose access to that file. And I know, even not with my students, but with my colleagues, that happens all the time. We want to give them editabilities, but they're not thinking it through, and so they move something to reorganize, and we all lose access to it, and then the hunt begins. So.
Yeah, the thing to kind of add to that is, I think you got to remember too, when you're creating new documents, be careful or conscious of what folder you're actually creating the document within, because those sharing permissions for that folder are going to be carried through to that document. So if you're in a document that you do not want shared with students, but you create it in that shared folder, it's going to be automatically shared with those students. So you just got to be kind of conscious about those things.
Yeah, that inheritance of sharing rights is something that you must be conscious about. And Jim, that was a good point about we've all suffered from having given edit rights to an actual folder. So sort of that lesson learned is to give view only on the folder, but then edit access to the documents within, which is fine, depending on how you want to go about and choose that. Perfect. All right, well, I think let's just double check that we've hit all that as far as we needed to. So creating work folders, sharing folders, and those different naming conventions. How do you feel about naming conventions, guys?
Oh, you got to have them. Again, that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Google Classroom is it adds the naming convention on. I have suffered the wrath of all kinds of students sharing their work with me, and every one of them called it my assignment. And of course, when they're typing, they don't put their name into their document, sort of thing. So I always teach them a naming convention that, being a high school teacher, for me it was always, here's the period, here's the name of the assignment, and here's their name somewhere in it as well. So I always had those three things on the go. That made it also really easy for me because before Google Classroom, I was, let's say, a little less than organized sometimes in my folders, but I could always call up all of their assignments or all of an individual student's work all at once using the Omnibox and just doing that quick search, and I could have a list of everything related to whatever topic I wanted, assignment or student.
Good point. Now, even when I use Google Classroom, I find that in order to stay organized, I can't just name the assignment sort of a dissertation on Macbeth. I need to make sure that I'm naming my own convention. So Unit 4, and then I say literacy, and then I can have my other subfolders. So I have to be careful of my naming convention if I want my own Google Classroom folder within my drive to be organized properly. So I'm very careful about how I name my assignment titles because they carry through to the folder titles that will be in my Google Classroom. Jeffrey, do you have a naming convention that you use?
Kind of, I guess, similar to what both of you guys have talked about already. I mean, I think an important thing is you don't need to have one that's going to be the same as everybody else in your school, as long as you have one that works for you. But you need to have sort of a system in place. And like with a lot of elementaries, it's often just the title of it with their name. And something as simple as that is easy for the students to do and easy for us to search.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's look at the second question then. So what kind of projects do you suggest if you were working with second graders in wanting to explore Google Drive with them?
All right, I'm going to jump in on that one, which is really funny because I'm the high school guy. But it's probably one of the best ones I've seen lately is in terms of using actual Google Drawings, as a matter of fact, is one of the things I've seen working really, really well. And I think I saw it dropped into the document there, a reference to Roland's work in terms of building graphic organizers that the students can fill in and helping them to organize thoughts that way, doing virtual manipulatives. An easy way that you can create sort of that drawing, and I saw one done, around money, for example, or grouping or shapes or whatever you want to do, where students have kind of their own interactive workspace there that they can be creating and organizing using again and again. So I thought that was some pretty awesome stuff, and it's amazing. Again, not having that primary experience, but when I watch the teachers who give the students the opportunity just to try some stuff, it just seems to take off so quickly that it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure. Just to kind of add to that, using drawings, one of the things that sometimes gets students to use is something like Screencastify. and so they'll actually build a story or using manipulatives on it, hit the screencastify, and then kind of like explain everything in essence. They'll basically do a screencast of explaining their thinking and understanding and reasoning. So that's something that's easy to do. Talking about the graphic organizers as well, Jim, being this GEG Ontario, Mindomo, which is an add-on in Google Drive, is a graphic organizer, which is awesome. It does so much cool stuff. You can add YouTube videos, pictures, images, links, so you can really map out whatever you're trying to show your learning or understanding, and even as a presentation tool.
That's perfect. That's a good suggestion. So that's an OSAPAC software that's available free to teachers here in Ontario, which is an add-on to your Google Drive, which is fantastic. Maybe just another project. I find that when I'm working with very young students, one of my favorite tools, apart from Google Draw, which I love, would be Google Presentations. I like being able to have a collaborative presentation built by the students in the class, because each student is able to stay on their page of the presentation, and it prevents them from sort of walking all over each other. When you throw them all into a Google Doc, they're not quite ready for that environment yet. So I've done a project with very young students where they worked on ecosystems, and each student had access to their page, and they were asked to add information about their ecosystem and add videos. And it actually worked out quite well because they were in that sort of self-contained little world of their page within a collaborative document. And then they were able to float from one page to the next and comment on each other's work. So I found that to be a very easy first tool to introduce the students to. Have you had to work with Google Presentations?
Yeah, I'll second that one. Presentations is often where I start with anyone, even new to the Google environment, because it is easy and it gives them their own space sort of thing. An activity that I do quite oftentimes, either in PD or with students, whatever case, I'll call it the 7-minute presentation, so that they can explore sort of the tools. I say you have 7 minutes, and I give them a topic. So I've used it as everything from diagnostic to actually them developing a lesson. I say you have 7 minutes, and you have one slide to tell me what's important about that particular topic or what you know about that topic, and I challenge them to, play with font and background and to add a video and to, add an animation just so they can play with the presentations a little bit. And then I always have some fun with it because I say, okay, but I'm going to present whatever you put on the slides. So with high school students, they often throw me under the bus and say, okay, we're going to have some fun with you here, but it's a great way to introduce it, and them having their own space in that collaborative document is great. And one of them said to me once and said, I've even done that introducing math problems or solving some sort of problem. They say, but can't I cheat by looking at someone else's slides? And I kind of said, well, we got to get past that cheating mentality, and it's actually just sharing ideas and looking at how someone else did it, sort of thing. So it helps you get past that mentality. Yeah, it is collaboration, exactly. So creative problem solving, we'll call it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Have you seen other things with very young students?
Well, I mean, just something as simple as I use a lot of read and write with a lot of my students, and so that is a Google extension that is a paid one from TextHelp. But I see a pile of students in our board especially using that to help just with writing, and as far as even improving the writing with listening, having the ability to listen back to the work, and it's going to help students with decoding and fluency, because it's highlighting the words as they're being actually read back to the students, so it's actually tracking them, so the students are actually seeing the words as they're being read. So a student who just PM benchmarks might be a little bit low, whatever, they can listen to a bunch of text, and it's going to help them actually improve their reading as well.
Yes, and just maybe to second that, Read and Write for Google is free for teachers. So it is a paid app if you want to use it with your classroom, but a teacher could use that app and demonstrate that use, and especially have students use that sort of highlighting as its reading feature, which does really improve fluency, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of components within Read and Write too that are free. Like the freemium version, the reading portion is always free for students. You just don't get word prediction or speech to text, right? But there are add-ons that do both of those things as well, so you can kind of replicate the whole tool without really having to have it.
Perfect.
Yeah. talking to that speech-to-text one, just real quick there, Jeff. I don't know if you've seen the add-on in Google Docs called speech recognition.
Yeah.
It's fairly new, and they've fixed the glitch in it. But it's speech recognition for I don't know how long the list is up to right now. It started out, I think, 27 languages. I think it's closer to 50 now. I've been using it with a lot of different language learners. I've tested it out in French, Korean, Spanish, Greek. I've had a few.
I've had Czech as well.
You tried it in Czech sort of thing, and people were amazed. And using it with French language learners in particular, I was just working with a group the other day. We came up with a strategy that in class now they have to talk to their computer until it understands them and can write what they're saying. So great for working on pronunciation, and those kids who have trouble getting their ideas down in writing, but they're really strong orally. It works obviously with really young kids who are just learning to write, but works all the way up through sort of thing, so that kids are able to get their ideas down, even if they're not able either to write them out or type them out. So.
Yes, that add-on is one of my new favorite add-ons that I discovered recently, and it really does work very well in the French language also, which is fantastic. All right.
So being the teacher in the room here as well, for those watching, Jim or Lisa, put you guys kind of on the spot. What do you say for students at grade 1, 2, even 3 who are using speech recognition as far as developing writing skills? If they're using speech recognition solely, how do you find that's going to help them or hinder them as far as continuing to learn how to write?
I think it's an essential first step. I think for students to be able to see what it is that they are speaking, and then to be able to have that feedback of that visual, correct way of writing the word is essential. I think it's an essential building block of being able to have them build a vocabulary. And then they will be less afraid of using words that they may not know how to spell because they have that support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say the issue of if you want to make sure we're not using it solely, I think is the key. It is kind of one of the things you said, but to use it as part of the activity and then to build off of it. Again, I think like Lisa said, the opportunities it allows them to say something that they are terrified of trying to spell, but they can say it and there it is, and then it starts to become kind of part of their more academic vocabulary, I guess, in there. So.
Yeah, no, those are two great points because it's something I hear a lot from teachers, sort of their concern about that, and I couldn't agree more with you both of you. So.
Perfect. Let's move on to one of these other...
We got it right, Liz.
Fantastic. Let's move on to one of these other questions. So the question was, if students have access to a GAF Gmail, therefore a Gmail address that belongs to their school board, how do you feel about them using that address to correspond with teachers?
You notice we don't all jump in on this one.
Well, yeah, I'm fine. I think Lise kind of started it right there. You're talking about a school account.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to separate, home and state, sort of, right? As far as school communication should be for school communication, and you have to set those clear boundaries, I think, with communicating with students with via email. So keep it school-related, work-related, and I don't have any issues with it.
Yeah, I think it's actually... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm the same. Like, I started using Google Apps before we had domains. So, I was part of students' Gmail lists and part of their contact sort of thing. And it actually put me in a bad position a couple of times because we're teachers 24/7. I got that email that was sent out to everyone in their contact list. And there was actually twice that I had to move it forward to admin because there were issues of bullying and things like that. So I love the fact that now they have a school account, and it's a great chance to talk to them about that, just what Jeff said, in terms of this is your work account, this is your personal account, keep the two separate and teach them about sort of appropriate behavior. In our board, actually, we have email on from 1 to 3, and it's internal only, so they can only email other people in the domain as well. So we see that as a great opportunity to start working with them to say, here's how you use it safely and responsibly, and then from there on up, they have fully functioning accounts. I know sometimes federations are still saying don't email students, but again, it's don't email them in an unsafe manner. And the one thing I always recommend to teachers, I work with all our new teachers, is set your kind of standards for when you're going to email students. Like emails, if you're going to use your Google account, which is a great thing to use, email them, say, between 9 and 5. Don't be emailing them at 11 o'clock at night. It always sets them up badly because then the students are all of a sudden, well, hey, I emailed you at midnight last night. How come you didn't answer me? Because you answered them at that time once before. So that way, not just with students, but with parents as well.
Perfect. And I think that that's a good launching point for setting those boundaries. And as teachers, we have a tool that is provided to us by our school board. And therefore, we owe it to our school board to use that tool in our communications with parents and students. I still have teachers that I encounter that are using their personal email addresses and that are communicating with teachers and other students. And I find that that is setting yourself up for a very dangerous situation. So your board is providing you with a tool, and the students have access to that same tool, which is able to be monitored, yes, but also just has that ability to track in case that there's any sort of behavior issues. So I find that that ability means that you have some type of security by using that tool as opposed to using an outside tool. So my first step when I see a group of students is to ask them to access their school account. And then I explain that that will be the only account that we will be communicating with. If a student needs to forward that elsewhere to be able to read it on their phone or whatever it is that they want to do, that's fine on their end. But as far as I'm concerned, the emails that I send out and the emails that I would like to receive must all come from that school account. And I think that that is where you've got the backup then from your school district, but also from your school union and also from the province. So the Ontario College of Teachers does recommend that if you are to communicate with students, only to use the tool that is provided by your school board. So I find that that is really interesting.
Yeah. The nice piece, just to add on to that now as well, is that Google Education now that they're putting Google Vault as a free part of the package. It's allowing school boards now. Our school board was very hesitant to move to Gmail before because they were concerned about the fact that the emails aren't backed up for the 7 years that are required, but now with Google Vault being provided for free, that should change the landscape as well. So now they can archive all those messages for the required amount of time.
And then be able to access them if need be. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're protected.
So I'd like to welcome Sandra to our Hangout. So hello, Sandra.
Hi there.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
Event. Hi. So I'm Sandra Chow. I'm a Google certified teacher at Toronto District School Board, and I teach grade 5-6 right now.
Perfect. So we had a question earlier just before you were able to join us, and I know you had a previous event, so thank you for doing 2 events in one evening. But the teacher was asking about how to integrate Google Drive and Google Drive activities with younger students, so students in grade 2 in particular. And we had suggested maybe starting with the presentations tool because it allows kids to stay in their own environments. And we had also said that we all adore using Google Drawing with them and using that as almost a interactive activity or a collaborative activity that we could do. And then Jeffrey had mentioned that we were also able to access Mindomo here in Ontario that allows students to get their ideas down on paper. So did you have anything that you wanted to add, seeing as you're the only elementary school teacher on this panel?
A good idea would be if you're using Google Documents to create a table format so that students can more easily access the information that they need in a graphic organizer.
Perfect. So tables in Google Docs, fantastic. And have you seen successful projects that you've done with younger students?
Definitely Google Drawing is a great tool because they can manipulate things and being able to link to other sites, because really I see Google Drive as a launching pad to so many other tools that you can go to outside of the web. So being able to have students even go start from the Google Drawing or from the Google presentation and then being able to link to an outside website source is also very useful so that they can then kind of choose your own adventure or try their own thing. And then again, the sorting aspect of drawing and Google Slides is probably the best for the younger kids because they can more easily manipulate objects and manipulate drawings to sort.
Perfect. So I've added those to our collaborative doc. So that's fantastic. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next classroom question here. We have any tips for assessment of documents submitted through Google Classroom? So we're looking specifically at the assessment and that side of things. So who wants to give that a go?
I'll jump in first on this one. I'd say actually Google Docs has completely changed my assessment practices. It's kind of reminded me that assessment is truly a process that happens kind of all throughout. So what I would say in terms of assessing assignments handed in, start assessing right away. So as soon as the students create the documents, when they write that first paragraph, get in there and give them some feedback, some good, some bad, and stay in there on a regular basis. I think the more feedback that you can give along the way, the better off you're going to be. As you're getting towards more of the evaluation end of things, then, and I know Scott's not on with us tonight. I know he'd love to talk about Gubrick through Doctopus as well, so you can actually attach rubrics to the documents and the assignments as well. But I always, with any assignments I put out in Google Docs, I'm including success criteria directly in the doc. If there's a rubric attached, that goes directly in the doc, so they know everything as they're getting started. But for me, it's that ability to jump in there and provide feedback all along the way, right from the word go. I remember back to taking home the rough drafts of 60 different papers, and all of them were awful. And it became so overwhelming for students that they got so much feedback all at once they didn't know how to handle it. But now that I give them feedback right from that first paragraph they write, the quality of what they do has just skyrocketed. And by the time, marking the product is easy because you've spent the time, little bits at a time, helping them improve, and the products they produce are absolutely awesome. So
that's so true. And I don't know if you know this feature, but when you're commenting an assignment or when you're commenting a Google Doc, if you use the plus in the comment and you say plus and then you label the name of the participant, you can actually direct your feedback to one of the particular group members. So that allows you to target your feedback to the person that you want that feedback to go to, as opposed to making general comments that all group members need to access. That's sort of just a little quick tip. Jeffrey, did you have something that you wanted to hit on assessment?
I mean, you guys have kind of talked about a lot of it as far as within Classroom. Like, I don't use a Classroom a lot, like I said, within our board, so I don't have probably experience as some of you guys would to it. But I think just even within Google Docs, you having the comment and also having the ability to have the changes actually made, so kind of like tracking changes. I can't think of what it's called right now off the top of my head. What's it called? Edit changes. Having that ability to turn on so you can make suggestive edits, that's what it is, suggestive edits to teachers, also helps for colleague to colleague, but I don't like that tool for a sense for teachers using it with students because it makes the exact recommendation to the student of what they need to change, and often students will just hit the check mark and accept the changes without actually even looking at them. So personally, I prefer leaving comments where students actually have to investigate a bit and take a look and see what they actually need to change.
On that one, Jeff, I agree. I use the suggested edit mode now, depending on the student, and that's one of the awesome things is being able to differentiate the level of feedback as well. And then usually when I start with the suggested edit, I always make sure that as I give all that feedback, I put one absolutely ridiculous suggested edit in there. And that way I can just check their work and see, did they go through and just hit check, 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 and say, what does this mean? And that gives a good point for discussion at that point. So.
Perfect. Have you explored the use of Kaizena with your Google Docs to give actual oral or verbal feedback to the students? I find that to be a very strong tool to use.
It's great, but I don't use it at least as much as far as giving this feedback to my students. I use it more as like an AT tool for students giving me answers. So giving them maybe questions 1 to 5, and they can highlight question 1 and then hit Kaizena Mini, which is just the add-on within Google Docs. They can answer the question, and then as a teacher I can listen to it. So those students, when you're not actually assessing writing activities, that gives them the ability to still show what their knowledge understanding is by just orally explaining it.
I do like the Kaizena even with that oral feedback, because as you're saying, instead of students being able to just go through and click on the suggested edits and just have all their modifications already made for them, by giving them that verbal feedback, they have to then address that. They have to listen to your feedback, and then they have to interpret it and address that. So I think that maybe using a mix of these tools together would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I also find that I like to enable it so that other students can see other students' work, so that they can give peer feedback to each other. That's also helpful as well. So I know sometimes in Google Classroom it's just between the teacher and the peer, but it's more powerful when a peer is able to look at another student's work and then provide the feedback, and them being able to communicate, because sometimes I can't get to everybody's document right away, and they cover my feedback when I can't get to it on time, and it's even more powerful when they give it. And then when we consolidate back in the classroom the next day or the next morning, I can highlight certain common mistakes or maybe even somebody else's feedback and say, wow, look how rich the feedback this student had given, and highlight that so that they can encourage each other through feedback, and it just helps them to feedback each other better.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Thanks. Other assessment ideas, because I know we went straight to feedback, which is obviously a very important part of assessment, but how about returning grades to students? How about that aspect of assessment?
I'll speak to it just a little bit as far as coming from the AT background. My biggest gripe with assessment and giving feedback back is that a lot of the students who need this feedback, often it's given to them in a written format, a lot of times on sheets of paper. And if I'm an AT student who maybe has difficulty with reading, often they're getting the feedback in a format that they can actually not comprehend or understand. So I think we need to be aware of that and make sure that when we're giving feedback, we're thinking of the student in mind, making sure that they can truly understand how they can improve or how they need to improve on their work.
That's perfect. Great. And how about the rest of you, Sandra or Jim? How do you return feedback to students or return evaluations or assessments to students?
Well, I was thinking just even using Google Forms. I use that quite frequently. So where in a oral presentation or some kind of media literacy presentation, when students are doing their presentations, I find being able to submit everything on a Google form. So the students are presenting, then I create a Google form where I'm actually doing the evaluation on the Google form. I type a lot faster than I do write. So I find instantly I'm able to give them, using a rubric of some sort, their levels in the different areas, and then I submit a comment at the end. So I already have all the data. I really just need to email it to them, or I could use Doctopus or Rubric and just email it that way through an add-on, but all the information is already there. So for oral presentations, I find Google Forms really, really handy rather than having it all on a paper sheet where we used to just give them feedback and hand them the sheet back. And then the other thing was if I do an assessment, a Google Form assessment on certain subject areas, so for example, tomorrow we're doing one on social studies, I already pre-format my spreadsheet so that they're conditionally formatted. So all the answers or multiple choice or whatever short answers, they're already there and pre-marked so that the students know right away what their mark is, and I can then give them feedback. So just being able to have the assessment and the marking done already is just a really handy trick.
Yeah. Jumping onto that as well, I was going to say for some of the objective stuff, like multiple choice and quick true false, so very quick assessments. The Flubaroo add-on is always a great one to use in terms of for forum work and things like that. I know there's another one called Super Quiz that I haven't done a lot of work with. I don't know if any of you have, but I know it provides a much deeper level of feedback, so you can kind of give feedback to each individual response, if it's correct or if it's incorrect. And then the other one I also use, especially for when you were talking presentations, reminded me of a form that I use that basically I build the rubric using a grid in the forms, and then as soon as I submit it using either Formule or Autocrat, I'll have it send them automatically to the students. It's like, here's your report, here's it immediately. Here's the levels I did. I love using voice to text in my forms as well, so I can kind of just give that quick anecdotal comment. They think I'm strange talking to my computer, but that's okay. And then that fires off to them right away, because the faster that's in their hands, the better, sort of thing. And I'll usually have students doing the same thing as well in terms of doing some peer assessment on it as well.
Fantastic. Yes, I do love that peer assessment, and I'm using forums also to have students submit peer assessments and being able to collate that data and then email it out to the group that presented. So I find that's fantastic. All right, so some great notes there that we've added to our collaborative doc. So thanks, guys. Shall we address another question?
Let's do it.
All right, so there's only one more in our document, so if anybody's out there listening, please add some more questions. We have another 24 minutes to go. All right, we might get out early, so that's fantastic. Let's take a look at the next question. So it's asking about whether or not we can link to just a portion of a YouTube video. And I saw that there are some great suggestions already in the doc there, so I'll let whoever added them in speak to that.
Yeah, so I added those in, Lise. So one option is called Video Notes. It's videonot.es, and it's a website that actually allows you to take in a pre-existing pre-existing YouTube video, and you can actually add notes to it at certain timestamps. So it's not actually taking you to the portion of the video, but you can link your notes to specific portions, which will allow you to jump to that part. I also added a little link there to PD Without Borders. It's sort of a project that I've been working on with a couple other GCTs, and there is a video on there by one of the greats, Kyle Pace, who did a little session for us on video notes. So be sure to check that out. He kind of goes through and takes you through how it works.
Yeah, he uses that as his Google Slam.
I was going to say, I think Lise is going to be a little jealous there, because I think she's lost out to that Google Slam a couple of times, that demo Slam. Sorry.
And then the other thing I just added was actually James Peterson. I couldn't remember how to do it, so he just actually sent me a message letting me know. If you add the end t equals and then whatever the time session you want at the end of the Google URL, it'll take you to that exact portion of the video.
Yeah, and even in YouTube now, when you go to YouTube, it'll give you that option of getting the URL that starts from here. You get that option just below the video, and that's all it's doing is it's adding that and then the time, the start time, where you want it to start out. So that doesn't help us if we only wanted like a 20-second clip within the video, but it does allow you to start the video where it is that you wanted it to start. So that's one other option. Other suggestions on if you wanted just that 20-second sort of middle video and then.
I'd have to look this one up, and I don't remember exactly how to do it. I think James Sanders taught me this one, or maybe it was Jim Sill. In YouTube Editor, you can start to build playlists very, very quickly, and I think within those playlists, I think you can mark a start time and a finish time. I don't remember the exact specifics on doing that sort of thing. I'd have to do a little bit of digging, but I'm sure we can find that info and add it to the doc. But the YouTube editor that is just native to YouTube when you have your account allows you to do some pretty awesome stuff when you're putting videos in. You can actually do an intro to the video. So say you're going to be away on a day and you want kids to watch a video. You can actually insert yourself at the beginning of the video and say, okay, here's what I want you to watch. Here's what you're watching for and things to consider. It'll play that video clip. And you can also add sort of a text intro and other info to stuff on your playlists as well. And then making those playlists private and then sharing those with your class, if you're using some sort of LMS, is an easy way to do it as well. But we'll have to look for those instructions on cutting it with the YouTube editor.
Perfect. Well, that's an excellent suggestion. I know one of my native editors. Sorry, Sandra. I keep speaking over you. I think there's a delay in your speech, so I miss out. Go ahead.
I had a student who also introduced me to Endless Video, so I included the link on the Google Doc, but we were doing a dance routine and we were playing the same portion over and over again. So if you actually go to that website, you can put the URL link and then put the time from what time to what time, and you can actually put it on a loop, or it just plays it from one time to another time. Well, we liked the loop because we were doing a dance routine, so it just kept playing in the same song over and over again. But that's a really great website too.
Nice.
Perfect. So that could potentially solve. Yeah, that could solve the issue then. That's fantastic. Great. All right.
Students are quite savvy.
When you don't know, that's where you ask.
That's what we need for next FAQ. We need to bring some students on board for our next Google FAQ.
Right.
So I think we should work on that. All right, our next question is regarding Nexus tablets. So Nexus tablets do not allow Google Draw to work properly. So not yet, anyhow. I'm sure that they're working on this. They're asking for other collaborative drawing alternatives that would be able to replace Google Draw on Android.
Yeah, I threw the one thing out there is explain everything. I mean, it kind of can do everything. So it can do your basic draws and functions. So that would be kind of one of the suggestions that I would make. But I'm sure there's maybe more basic ones. I know more iOS. I'm not as familiar with Android as far as those drawing apps.
Yeah, that's what I was just questioning. I added Educreations and Show Me in there. There are two others, and I'm not positive they're Android, and the other one would be Screen Chomp, as well as another one that very, very simple to use and make the drawings. The collaborative nature of those I don't think is quite as strong. Now, Explain Everything, I believe, is going also web-based, I believe, now as well. So that'll add even more functionality to it across all the platforms.
I haven't explored my Nexus tablet because I'm sort of new to that right now, but I think that you can use Prezi, and Prezi has some tools inside, but that does allow that collaboration aspect. So although it's not used as a drawing tool, I think that that might be able to get around the allowing students to collaborate and yet still be able to draw on the same document. So maybe that would be something to look at.
Yeah, sorry, I am not familiar either with other tools. I was thinking about Morali as a possibility, like any web-based online whiteboard kind of websites might be helpful. There's another one I was trying to rack my brain to try to remember, and I can't. But it wasn't that great.
It wasn't that fantastic as an alternative. So I think that what we should all do is just petition Google to get Google Draw working properly on the Nexus tablets, and then we'll be all set.
All right. The Smart Amp option, if you want to pay for Smart Amp, is a great tool too.
All right, it looks like we might have lost Lise there for a minute. So she's frozen up. So let's take a look at our next question. I think we've got a couple more in there. Any drawbacks to using ad blocker?
I do find it slows down as an extension. So sometimes if my internet or my Chromebook, it doesn't normally slow down. It is actually my ad blocker that's slowing down my Chromebook.
Yeah, I haven't had any problems with it. Again, I maybe just haven't noticed. I do every once in a while kind of click on it to look at the stats in terms of what it is blocking, though. And to me, I guess it's worth it. So I'm a pretty big fan of ad blockers. So. Now, there is two different ad blockers out there, I think, as well. I think there's an ad blocker and an ad blocker plus, and I got to think about which one I actually use because one of them is really good and one of them is not. They kind of use the same naming, but they're not actually the same app or company, I don't believe. So.
I think it's Adblocker Plus, I believe is what I use, and yeah, it's the same kind of thing. It's pretty good. I check it out. It's kind of the same as you, Jim, every once in a while, just to sort of see what it's looking like, and it seems to work pretty well. One thing I could think of is, Sandra, you're having issues. It just might be just the lack of sort of RAM on the Chromebook, and you're multitasking too much.
Oh darn. Yeah, but I use the Adblocker Plus too, the one with a stop sign.
Yeah, the stop sign with the hand in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Lise, how about you? I don't know if you're still kind of with us or not. You've got a pretty sweet frozen face right now.
And she's still frozen. Okay, so.
Moving on. So I think hopefully that answers the question about Adblocker.
I think so.
What's the next question we got? Do you have any search engines you would recommend for young elementary students?
I don't know if my connection's any better now or not, but...
oh, yes, it is.
Got you back there, Lise.
You're back. Yeah, we can hear you.
Back. Fantastic. I love the creating your own search engine. So what you can do with custom search engines in Google is specify which websites are searched when the students are entering their search terms. So for instance, if with young students I'm studying the planets, I can limit their search to NASA website and a few other websites, which then allows me to know that they're going to be in that safe environment of those 4 or 5 predetermined websites when they're affecting their searches. So that's one way of doing it, is to use the custom search engines.
Yeah, I think for younger kids, I'm a huge fan of that as well. Just the fact that you can go through and you can vet the information. Teaching them those good search strategies is something we kind of expect them to have. We hear the old, they're digital natives. They were born with an iPad in their hands, and inherently, when I get them in high school, they still don't know how to do a good Google search. So it's really important that we teach them that. But starting with the Google search engine or the Google custom search, a great way to do it to limit them so they are working in a really productive environment and getting there, but then teaching them good search strategies. And I think it doesn't really matter which search engine you're using. Obviously, we're probably a little biased towards Google, but teaching them those strategies and teaching them the advanced tools I think are really, really critical sort of things. So, you know, the best search engine is whatever search engine you're using, their advanced search options are what you want to be accessing.
Yeah, no, for sure, Jim, I agree completely with what you're saying, because there's so much within Google search and the advanced search tools that people have no idea what they can even do. Michelle Armstrong always does a great sort of advanced search things, and she has done one for us as well on PDF Without Borders. So there's another kind of plug, I guess, for PDF Without Borders, but check it out because she does all different kinds of things, kind of very quick tidbits and tricks to help you with your advanced search, as far as even, you know, changing the language to be more basic. So for our younger students, having things such as transparent pictures, like just some of those little basic things that makes life so much easier.
Perfect. And Sandra, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I agree completely. Just even teaching them quotation marks and just finding good keywords to search, because I find kids just don't know how to use keywords, and so helping them to identify the main ideas and using the minus sign or the plus sign and or searching dot GCs and all those tricks. It's good to teach the kids. And then for images, always just teaching them to go to pick licensing and making sure that they're choosing Google images that are able to be modified.
Fantastic. So those are some good search tips. Wow, fantastic. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Maybe we've just got a few minutes here before we sign off. I think we might be able to sign off just a few minutes early. But have any of you heard of the EDU in 30 initiative that's going on?
I have. I saw you did one today.
I did one today. So I'm
Well
not
done.
usually one of these, you know, blog every day for 30 days kind of things, and I don't usually jump on these bandwagons. But I think that this is a really cool initiative. So that EDU in 30 hashtag is a George Couros initiative where he's saying that we should all be sharing in 30 seconds using the new Twitter availability of being able to shoot video with your mobile device and post it directly to Twitter. So you've got that 30-second window where you should be able to get out your favorite trick or your favorite tool. And mine from today was Google Moderator, which I think is a great tool and very underused, which allows you to have students post ideas and suggestions and then have kids vote on that and then have the best ideas come to the top based on that ranking structure. So I think that that's a neat tool. So I don't know if you each wanted to share your version of EDU in 30, and then I'll get you to post it to Twitter afterwards.
Wow.
Oh, I'm going to jump in first so no one steals it. Probably my favorite tool in working with students and staff is certainly the research tool. That jumps into all of them, and it ties into some of the other stuff we were talking about. In terms of streamlining the workflow, making information easily accessible to students, and even narrowing down those searches in terms of, you know, Sandra was mentioning, you know, is it Creative Commons licensed and things like that. My students, when I show them that, it'll build your bibliography if you want it to, and it'll do all that citation. They started to really gain that appreciation as to why we do it. I was never hung up on, you know, get the format right sort of thing, but they understand why they're actually citing. They understand that idea of sort of academic ownership. That's not the word I'm looking for, but intellectual property. There we go. So that's probably my favorite tool right now. So.
Fantastic. All right, who's next?
Sandra?
Oh dear, no, you go first.
How about the panic button? Do you know the panic button, everyone?
That's great.
It's a good little add-on. You can just hit the panic button, everything on your screen goes away, and all your tabs collapse, and then you can hit the green light when everyone goes away and you want it to come back. Anyway, it's not really an education one, but it's kind of a fun little extension that teachers always get a kick out of. I think my sort of, in all seriousness, Edu30 would be just built-in functions and features of an iPad. It's probably one of the most overseen things with iPads and iOS is, you know, the ability to do guided access, speech to text, have it read back to you. You don't need a whole bunch of apps to do these things for it. The device itself already does it.
Mm-hmm. So My colleague and I have been doing a lot of tablet. So I co-teach with a special ed HSP teacher. So we have an inclusive classroom, but she's in my classroom as well. And so we've been trying to work with different students and see what they're comfortable with. So we use a lot of the Read and Write Gold extension for the students, in which the text-to-speech is really, really great for them. And then it has the predictive text. But there's some students who are just way more oral, and the predictive text is not happening for them. And so we've been using a lot of Voice Note 2. The Voice Note 2 is the one that works really well. And it's an extension that you can add. I like the extension more than the app because it's just one click. And it's been really, really effective with the kids, because all of a sudden they have a voice in their writing and they're able to produce much more in their writing. So that's one of our new favorite extensions that we've been using with the students, and they're really excited to use it as well. So Voice Note 2 extension.
Perfect.
Nice.
Well, that was well done. Not bad for having been put on the spot. Awesome. Well, listen.
What about you, Lise?
Oh, well, I did mine. Did my Google moderator. It was awesome. All right. Well, I think that we're going to maybe wrap it here. I think that I appreciate all of you who stuck with us and our viewers out there. So do give us feedback, and feel free to share that on Twitter. And this link will be available if you ever wanted to share this with your colleagues. And our Google Doc, where we've consigned all of our answers to your questions, is going to be available forever also. So feel free to share, and we are appreciative of your time tonight. And I really appreciate the four of you, or the three of you, coming out and supporting me in this little adventure. So thanks, guys.
All right. Make sure you tell all your friends about GEG Ontario.
Yes, if you're not members yet, it's time to join. So you are welcome, and we're open to all. So feel free to post your questions in there, and one of us will get to it eventually.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night.